Assalamu alaikum everyone. Am I audible? Okay, so let's start the session. Assalamu alaikum, myself Ashad Ahmed Kamran, a beta MLSA. So today's session is going to be about building web APIs using Python and Flask. So a little bit about myself. I joined Microsoft Learn Student Ambassadors about a year ago. Then I got promoted to Alpha MLSA and now I am a beta MLSA. So let's look at some requirements that would be needed before we start the session. First of all, you will need an Azure account for students. Then you'll need Python 3.6 or later. And finally, Visual Studio Code on which we will be doing our building, our creation of the app. So let's discuss the agenda for today. First, I'm going to be giving you an introduction to Azure, then Python, and then Flask. Then we would be setting up an environment for our development. Then we will look what are the fundamentals of Flask. And then finally, we would be creating the actual app in Visual Studio Code. So Azure is basically Microsoft's cloud computing platform, which has many AI services they provide to you to integrate into your services. So basically, it is if I can show you my account. So this is what the dashboard looks like in Azure. First of all, you will have to create an account here. If you search Azure portal, then the first link will lead you to Microsoft's portal for Azure. And here you can sign up or log into your Microsoft account. So this Azure platform provides many AI resources. If I click on more services on the dashboard, all the services which they provide for you to integrate into your apps will be listed there. So it's loading. Let's wait a bit. Yeah, if you're working on AI or machine learning, you would like to work with these 22 services. I like the Face APIs and the Custom Visions API, but you can tailor anything to your use. They also provide the Azure OpenAI service, and the service which we will be using today is the translators service. As you can see, there are loads and loads of services which they provide to you, especially if you are a student. If you are, say, working on DevOps, so you can have the GitHub service or maybe API management or Azure DevOps organizations. So it's basically a complete resource that you can use to build anything that you like. So let's actually install some stuff on your computer so that we can start building the app. We would be creating a translation app today, which the front end would be basic HTML, but the focus is not on that. We would be mainly focusing on Python, Flask, and Azure, how to create services on Azure. and then how you can integrate the translator service. So I think most of you will have Python and Visual Studio installed in your computers. If not, you can just simply search install Python on your web browser and install Python on that. And similarly for Visual Studio Code, you can also search that up. So let's create a folder actually on my desktop. We can name it translator and open this in Visual Studio Code. For opening it, you can either run the CMD here, which I like. I like this way of opening the Visual Studio Code in the current directory, and simply write code dot. So it will open your Visual Studio in this folder, and you won't have to manually go open Visual Studio and then navigate to your folder. So the Visual Studio Code is open. Uh, First of all, you'll have to create a Python app uh, .py. From here, you can just press Control, Windows, Alt, and N to pop this menu up. You can select either Python file or a Jupyter notebook. I'm gonna go ahead and use the Python as my main working area. You can choose Jupyter notebook as well. So here we're gonna install the required uh, libraries. I don't think it created the Python file. Let's just manually create it. app.py. I am going to save it in my folder and hopefully yeah, there we go. So now we're gonna open our terminal, or we can just press Control Shift and the button below the escape key. Once it's open, we're gonna create a virtual environment and then activate it. So the way you do it is you write Python -m venv for a virtual environment, and then the name of your virtual environment. So I'm gonna write .ve venv. Now it will start to create the virtual environment in which we will install the libraries which we will be using. So there are first you have to activate the virtual environment so that your VS Code knows that which virtual environment to use. So you simply write .venv, the name of your virtual environment. I think I did not click on this. Meanwhile, let's just go to our slides until it's creating. So next up we have the Flask fundamentals. Flask is basically a backend framework of Python. It is a library of Python and it is called a micro framework. It is called a lightweight or micro framework because it has only the core things which are required for you to build your own apps. So it is really simple to set up and customize. So that is why we are mainly using Flask, and you can do things like routing and templating to integrate with your database or your server. We will not be using a database today, but we will be using a server. So if you go to say a website, facebook.com, you see a URL on the top of it which says facebook.com slash maybe home. So that is the home page for your website. So what are they are called URLs. So basically we will be generating these URLs and using them in our application. So how Flask works is it sends and receives data. There are two methods for doing that. First is get and post, which are like the main uh, methods or verbs which are used for a basic application. So if you go to your facebook.com, you are basically sending a request to the server that make a front page render. It renders the front end of the facebook.com on your screen. So basically that is a request that you send to the server. The server takes that request and sends the HTML for that page. So we're considering the facebook.com as an example here, but we will be using the translator app. So when we open the translator app on our local host, so that is basically a get request to our local server that renders the page, that sends the HTML code to our web browser that we have it open on. So there will be a generic form on our main page, which in which we would be writing our text. And when we hit the submit button, we will see that how we do that later in the session. So that is a post request to the server. That means that some data has been entered by the user. The server processes that post request and gives you the output of the next instruction. So this is some example code for Flask in which decorators are defined. So let's actually go ahead on Visual Studio and let's see if it has created our virtual environment. So yes, it has created. So in order to activate the virtual environment, you have to write the name backslash scripts backslash activate. Uh, Let me see that. Oh yeah, there we go. When you see this green.env, your virtual environment name, you'll get to know that it is activated. So now we're gonna install our libraries. First is Flask, I believe. So we're just gonna write pip install. Pip means Python package installer pip, and then the name of your library. This will download the framework into your virtual environment. So why we created the virtual environment is basically so that uh, it doesn't play with the other environments, and it has a separate development environment. So when it's installed, it's gonna say successfully installed. Let's wait for that to happen. Flask is basically running on Jinja backend, created on Jinja, which makes it really helpful to integrate HTML, and it works seamlessly with HTML. So we're gonna install, I think, dot pip install I think I'm forgetting the install command for installing .env pip install. Yeah, I searched that up earlier. You don't always have to remember all the install commands for your environments. Just search it up on the internet. I think it's stuck. It's not letting me erase the install line. Let's just create another terminal. So we're gonna run this command and it will install .env. We'll see in a bit why we need these libraries. And then lastly, we would be installing requests library, which basically handles APIs and their calls. So that should install. Meanwhile, let's go to our slides. Here we have the decorators app.route, which basically is a Python way of saying uh, this is the there are already defined functions in another file which we import into our file, and we use the decorators, and any function below it will run on the basis of this decorator. And the method is get. The get method we would be using to send the request. And below we have another route. These are called routes decorator, and then we have our post function which will be rendering the web page. We have to create a templates folder in our directory so that Flask can take the templates from our directory easily. Let's create a new folder here called templates, which will be containing all our web pages. So there will be two web pages. The first two in which we will input the text, and when we hit the translate button, there will be another web page which will have our original text and our translated text. So let's go ahead and make our app. Okay, so this is all set up for us to start creating. First, I will create a new file in this called index.html. Maybe we can create both of our files simultaneously here. This is gonna be the HTML results.html. Okay, so this is ready to go, but how do we do it? We need a uh, Azure service for that to link to this back end. This is our front end. This is our back end, which has our roots. I already have the code for that, so I am going to just paste it and explain it to you guys. I also have the index.html already written, so I am going to just paste it here to save time, and then our results.html, paste it. I like to save my files before I run them. So this is our app. Let's go through what this app is doing. First of all, it is importing our necessary libraries. It is importing requests, which is again a library to handle the API and HTTP requests to the specified links. Then we have created a variable called app, which is basically sending the name to the Flask function in the Flask library. Then we have declared the same routes here. This is the get route, which is rendering the HTML file, and this is the post, which let's go through over it. So in these two lines, we have defined the text which is being input from the front end page, the index.html. The user would input the text. Let's actually go ahead and run our HTML file so that we have a basic understanding of what we are working with here. So this is our main page in which we will be inputting the text and then selecting our language from here. And if I show you the results page, it will have the original text which we gave as an input, and the translated text which the Azure service is returning, and the target language which we chose in the first page. Okay, all right. Let's go to the app.py and start discussing the code. The first two lines are basically inputting, and in these lines we are defining the key. So I didn't create a .env file here. Con Control Windows Alt N and .env to create a env file. Save in the same folder, and let's go ahead and create our Azure translation service. On the dashboard, you'll see you have many options, but you can go ahead in the top and type translator and hit enter, or just choose from the drop down menu. I think it's showing the already created service. Okay, so I want to create a new resource. There is usually a page that says create in another format, but I already created a service beforehand uh, in order to avoid any unseen circumstances. When you create your resource, you can select the resource, and this is the name that I chose earlier. So for the .env file, we have to define three variables. The first one is going to be key. The second one is going to be the endpoint that we are using for our web app. And the third one is going to be the location. Yes, so that now if we go here on Azure, we can just copy our key from here or this key and then simply paste the key here. The location, this is your location. Copy it and paste it in the location, sorry. And this is your link that will be used to send and receive the requests. If you are doing work with the documents, you can use this one as well. But for this session, we are only translating text, so we will be using this. So once this is ready, you are going to go here and define your key, endpoint, and location by using the OS module, which we imported earlier in the first line. This is basically defining your key, endpoint, and this is loading your keys and endpoints and locations. This is the path that says that this is the translation version, and below it is the line for appending the targeted language which we inputted earlier, so that it knows that we are trying to translate from whichever language that it detected to whichever language that we chose on the first page. And in the third line, we are finally constructing the URL, which is taking the endpoint that the link that we just pasted here, the path, the translation API version and the translator model, and the target language parameter that we are inputting here. And then we are loading our key, location, and uh, the content type and client trace ID as a dictionary in the headers variable. And then finally, we are creating the variable body variable that is the JSON payload for the which is returned from the model. And then we are just selecting the first the zeroth index of the JSON, and then in the end we are returning the uh, result. HTML is being rendered and the text is being given to that page. So let's go ahead and see our Azure and verify that these are the keys, okay, and location. So in order to run this application that you just created, you can simply type Flask run and hit enter. It should start a local host server, which you can visit yourself. This is the URL for you to visit. You can simply just copy and paste in your browser, or you can control click this to open the web app that you just created. If we go ahead in our development environment, let's check what is being done. Okay, so no errors so far. Oh, there we go. Our main page is rendered. Let's actually test this app, if it's working correctly or not. What should we write? Hello, you are beautiful. Don't forget to select your language that you want to translate this text to. Yay, there we go. The original text was "Hello, you are beautiful." Translated text in Italian, and the target language that was Italian. Okay, let's check our presentation. Let's continue our presentation. Not forget about that. Okay, so that brings us to our end of this session. So a little bit overview and summary of the session of today that we underwent. First, we installed our development environment, Python, Flask, and then we created our Azure account. Then we went in Visual Studio Code, then created a Python file, the main app.py file, which will be having our routes and rendering our pages. Then we created templates folder in our location in our directory, which contained all the web pages that are being used in the app.py. Then we went in Azure and created our translator service, and copied our endpoint key and location to our .env file that we created later in the session. Then we just simply run our code and our web app was applied. Of course, you can go ahead and play and create whatever you desire, but today we focused on our translator apps, which brings us to the end of our session. We will be taking questions. You can drop them in the chat box or open your mic and ask. Thank you from my side. Any questions, guys? I think no questions from you guys. So, last chance, guys. Any questions? I don't see any hand raises. I don't see any hand raises, so that means everything is clear to you guys. I hope to see many projects after this session and wish you good luck. Thank you. Let's end this session. Thank you for attending it. Allah Hafiz. Take care.